This Old Pinball video podcast on game room equipment,
including recent pinball machines, classic driving games, baseball games, skee-ball machines, classic gun games, classic pinball machines, bowling machines, hockey games, and coin-operated video games. Today's episode on Topcast Video, breaking down and setting up a pinball machine. Topcast host is Shaggy of This Old Pinball's DVD videos.
In this episode of Topcast Video, we're going to talk about breaking down a game and setting up a game, because I've assumed that you've located and have bought a game, and chances are good that it's going to arrive, or you're going to have to move it, or it's going to somehow end up in the state you see here. The game on end, the head off, the legs off, because you do not ever want to move a game with it all set up and on its legs and the back box erect. No way, don't do it. You're only asking for trouble. You have to break the game down into pieces like this. Otherwise, you're just going to either hurt yourself or you're going to damage the game. Also, it's extremely dangerous to move a pinball machine if you don't do it properly. Damn, I got to learn to move these things right. You see what I mean? So now I'm going to show you how to break down a game and how to set up a game properly, and by yourself. So now we're going to talk about how to disassemble a game to get it ready for moving. Though I'm using a 1960 Gottlieb EM wood rail to demonstrate this, this information applies to any era of pinball game, even up to the newest games. The first thing you got to do before you attempt any sort of move is to remove the lockdown bar, take the top glass off, and get the balls out of the game. Do not move a game with the balls in the game. I don't care how you get them out. Get them out now. Do it now before you move the game. A lot of games have a clear ball function too. In the test menu, you can actually use the game to empty the balls out, and it'll do it itself. Assuming you have the coin door closed, you got power to the coin. To disassemble a game, generally, these are the only two tools you need. An adjustable wrench and maybe a screwdriver. On electromechanical games, the first thing I want to do is get the head. Now, on newer modern games where the head is actually hinged to the lower cabinet, you can skip this step. All you have to do is lower the head down onto the cabinet. Now, on games with removable heads, the first thing you want to do is remove the connectors. On electromechanical games, there's usually 3 connectors. Sometimes there's 4. You don't really need to label them because they're usually a different number of pins for each one of the connectors, so you can't get them mixed up. Now, on solid-state games that have a head that's hinged, you don't have to deal with any connectors. On solid-state games where the head actually comes off, on those, it's a little trickier, and you have to remove a lot more cabling, and in that case, I would suggest you do label the connectors. On this Williams game, you can see the connectors here that I've pulled up through the wiring through the neck, and I would label them. I usually put a number on both sides. Like here I got a 2 and a 2, and maybe on this one I put a 3 and a 3 on both sides so that it's real clear when I put them back together. On the Williams games especially, you can actually mix some of the plugs up. Usually you can't. Usually they're keyed differently. But notice this on the Williams, I can put the black in the white connector like this here. Oh man, I won't even begin to tell you what kind of damage this will do to the game. If you're confused after putting it in the connector that you don't think it might have gone to the right place in a situation like this on a Williams game, just look at the wire colors. Like here I've got red coming into red. It's like the same color in as the same color out. Yellow into yellow. So it's kind of hard to get them mixed up. I guess you could do it, but you know, I don't want you to, because we don't want to be fixing your broken game after you blew it up when you misconnected the connectors.
On early solid-state games with the removable head, don't forget to remove the grounding strap. Here we're removing the back box bolts
In 70s electromechanical games, the back box bolts are here from the back. 1, 2, 3, 4. On removable head solid state games, the bolts are inside the panel insert behind the back glass. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now the back box is completely disconnected from the lower cabinet. I like to put the back door on and lock it up. Just a personal preference of mine. Then I give it a big old bear hug. Take it off and set it down. And voila. What, headless. Take the power cord, stick it inside the lower cabinet. If it's one of these new 90s games where it's just a computer style, it just pulls out. If it's not, a lot of times you can just push the power cord into the game or pull it through from the inside. That way you don't have the cord getting in your way when you move the game. When moving these new modern games, before you put the head down, I like to put a couple pieces of cardboard right here, because otherwise when you fold the head down, you could damage the head here, and you can dent the side rails right here on the game. So I unlock it back here. There's usually a clasp, and then there's often two wing nuts on the inside. If you take the back glass out, there will be two wing nuts sometimes. Some people use it, some people don't. Most games I see people don't. But sometimes there's bolts there too. And then as I put the head down on these pieces of cardboard, it won't dent here. A lot of times there are those wing nut bolts here, and you'll have to get the glass out. Now the glass has a lock right here. Some games it's up here, some games it's on the side, but all the new 90s stuff, it's right here from the face, which is real convenient. The place I always look is inside the coin door. On this particular game, there's a hook right in the coin door, and magically, it's holding a set of keys. Now, what if you don't have a key up here for the back box? Oh, you are so screwed. Actually, on the new 90s games, all you need is a security wrench here, and the whole lock pulls out. But on the stuff where there's a key up here or in the side, oh man, you can drill the locks. It is not something I really like doing. But anyways, now I can take the glass up, angle it out, and slide it out of the way. Set it right here so it doesn't slide down and hit the floor. The lockdown bar is holding it in place. Open up the insert panel, pull down the dot matrix, and usually there's a set of wing nuts here that are holding the head in place. Now here's that clasp I was talking about. I'm telling you, take this thing off. It's only like 3 little 1/4-inch hex bolts. Take this thing off and set it aside. Otherwise, when we prop the game up on its butt, this thing is going to get all mangled and bent to hell. If you don't want to remove the latch, another thing you can do is use blue painter's tape, a low-tack tape, to kind of secure it. But I always recommend you just take this sucker off. Data East and new Stern games use a 5/16" hex wrench to latch and unlatch the back box. I just go to Office Max or Staples and get some of this just cheap shrink wrap, saran wrap stuff, and just go around the head like this, and just take a couple wraps and go around it. Either that, or you can use a strap, any kind of strap. I prefer this stuff because it's cheap, it's easy. When I'm done, I just throw it away. A lot of times with the straps, you have a clasp that comes together, and the clasp gets in the way. I find that you have a lot more problems with those. But they're reusable, where this clearly isn't. And maybe you already have a strap. But that's all you got to do to attach the head to the lower cabinet. To get the legs off, the first thing I do is remove the top bolts from the 2 rear legs. Rear legs, that is. Now, with the head off, or the head folded down if it's a solid state game, I will lift the game up and I'll balance it on my hip. Notice, hands free, legs off the ground. Hands free, legs off the ground. Pretty neat, huh? And now I could be drinking a beer and taking these legs off. Is the game heavy on my hip? No, not really. It's nice if you got a friend to hand these to, because if you don't, they make a lot of noise when you hit the ground. But really, it's kind of a piece of cake to do it like this. You may think that the newer solid state dot matrix games are harder to do like this. To be honest with you, they're a little bit heavier, but they're not. It's not unreasonable to do it like this at all. Now, I just set the cabinet down like that, and now comes the cool part. I go around to the front, and I just lift it up like that. Pretty neat, huh? Okay, now we get the front legs off, and this you can obviously do at your leisure. Now with the legs off, I'm ready to roll up my hand truck, put it on the sucker, and roll it away. See ya. 2 top bolts out of the rear leg bolts. And really, I wasn't kidding. These games aren't that heavy. Again, look, Mom, no hands. And I can actually unbolt these legs, get them down, and then again, set the cabinet on the floor. Setting it down on the floor is tough. You want to use your legs as you go down and not your back, because you can hurt your back. The same thing when you pick these suckers up. These are a lot heavier than electromechanical games, and if you can, try and use your legs as much as possible and not your back. Or you can have a friend help you if you got any friends. In disassembling a game, I always remove the old leg levelers. If they're rusted and gross looking, I throw them out. But I do this, I take them off, because it's a lot easier to store the legs like this without the leg levelers than it is to keep them in there. Now that I've shown you how to disassemble a game, it's time to show you how to reassemble it. Obviously, this is going to go in the reverse order of the disassembly, but there are some caveats which I would like to show you right now. I'm going to be using our 1960 Gottlieb dancing dolls to demonstrate this procedure. First are the parts and tools you'll need for assembling the game. I use an adjustable crescent wrench, and often you need a screwdriver, but not always. I'll need 8 leg bolts. These ones are all brand new except for this one, and you'll need 4 leg levelers, and again, these 3 are brand new, and that one isn't. Now I'm going to tell you why it's a good idea to use new leg bolts and new leg levelers. Here's a brand new leg leveler that you can see is nice and shiny, and an old rusty cruddy one. Throw these old rusty cruddy ones out and buy brand new ones. They're only about $1 to $2 each. These old crusty, rusty ones will leave marks on any sort of carpeting. They'll leave rust rings on your floors, and they generally look skank and disgusting. Be aware that leg levelers come in 2 lengths, 3-inch and 2-inch. For all electromechanical games, you're going to want 2-inch. For all solid-state games, you're going to want 3-inch leg levelers. Here are the acorn head leg bolts. Now when I say acorn head, that means the head of the bolt is shaped like an acorn, that is, it's rounded. These aren't bolts you can buy at Home Depot. You can get these at any kind of pinball retailer. I mean, you can use 3/8-16 by 2-inch or 2.5-inch bolts for your games, but I really recommend you get the right acorn head leg bolts. Now, this one is new, obviously, with nice, clean, sharp threads, and this one's used. Now, you can reuse leg bolts, obviously, but you need to look at them. Like on this one, I can see in this area right here on the threaded shaft of our used leg bolt, the threads are mashed down. That means that this bolt is basically just trash. Just throw it out and get a new one. Because if you put this leg bolt in your game, you will ruin the threaded leg plates on the inside of the game, and those are a pain in the butt to replace. So I really recommend that we just get rid of this and use new leg bolts whenever possible. Legs do come in different lengths, but for 99% of the games out there, the front legs and rear legs should be the same length. Now, how long should that be? Well, it varies from game to game and era to era. But in most cases, I'm going to assume that you have the right length legs. Generally, leg length goes from 27 inches up to 31 inches in length. Now's a good time to install your leg levelers. For what I deem as my front legs, I'm going to put the leg levelers in all the way, and what I'm going to use on my rear leg levelers, I'm going to have them out all the way, assuming that I have 2-inch leg levelers. On solid state games, I install the rear leg levelers, so I have about an inch more of adjustment. And note, the locking nut goes closest to the foot of the leg leveler. It does not go on this side, it goes on this side. I don't generally use lock nuts. Before I install the legs, I like to run a 3/8-16 SAE American thread tap in through my leg plate. And then I can clean these out in case some bonehead put a crappy bolt in there and tried to strip out the threads. This, in a lot of cases, will clean up the threads enough so that they'll be strong enough to support the leg bolts. Sometimes this trick won't work, and you'll have to replace the internal leg bolt plate. With the game up on its butt, I can easily attach the front legs with really little to no effort on my part. That's the whole point of this, is to show you how to assemble a game without having to work yourself to death, or without having to call 14 of your friends to come over and lift the game up and down and all around and hold it while you put the legs on. Now with the front legs attached, all I do is just put the game down like this. And now we're ready to put the rear legs on. Now I'm ready to install the rear legs. Again, I run my tap through these holes to make sure that these threads are nice and clean for my new bolts. I have my bolts accessible along with my wrench and my legs with leg levelers installed, because what I'm about to do is set up the game by myself without any added help, and it really isn't that hard to do, but I need to have all this stuff very accessible to me. That's why it's sitting right next to me. Then all I do is I lean down, grab the game, bring it up, and I balance it here on my hip. I have both hands free, which is really quite nice, because now I can just grab my legs, reach around, put the bolts in. It's not that difficult. I can at least get one bolt in on each side all by myself, and I'm barely even breaking a sweat. Then I can put the game down and put the other two bolts in, and I got the game almost all the way set up. On any game that has a detachable head, before I put the back box on, the first thing I have to do is remember to route the power cord through its little slot here underneath where the back box is going to go. If you forget to route the power cord in this manner and you put the back box on, you'll be taking the back box back off in order to do this step. So don't forget, the connectors inside the game will stay inside the game. Don't worry about that. Now I'm ready to mount the back box. Generally how I do this is you can find a friend, or you can just bear hug and lift with your knees and bring the back box up and around. To be honest with you, mounting the back box on games that have detachable heads like this is probably the hardest part. Next, we'll need to mount the bolts for the back box. Different manufacturers use different techniques for doing this. On this particular Gottlieb, they're done from the back, but on a lot of games, they're done from the inside underneath the back glass. Next, we need to attach the connectors. Just be aware that different style games will use different style connectors. This is an electromechanical game, so it uses these large, what they call Jones plugs. Usually you can't get them mixed up. That is, the number of pins on this plug will match the number of pins on this one. But if you are confused, you can always match by color. For instance, this wire right here is orange with a white stripe, and the wire on the mating female side is again orange with a white stripe. So if you get confused, you can always use the colors. When you press these connectors in, press in firmly. Some people I've seen will just set them in there like that. That is not connected. You have to actually push and make sure that they're in all the way. Lastly, I need to put the balls in the game. In order to do that, I have to take down the lockdown bar or the lockdown molding, the front glass molding, slide the glass back a little bit, and drop the appropriate number of balls into the game. Then slide the glass back and put the lockdown bar back in place. Now the number of balls used in the game does vary. That is, some games use 1 ball, some games use 3, and others use 5. How many balls are used in your game? Well, you can check your owner's manual to know for sure. To ensure you have the right length legs, most pin games will be about 37 inches tall from the floor to the top of the lockdown bar. So that'll give you an idea if you have the right length legs on your game. We're going to take a little break from all this, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Hey y'all, it's Bob from Bob and Bob Chiropractic. If you hurt your back recently carrying the game incorrectly, moving it around, we've got a product for you. Why don't you come by, Bob?
Well, Bob, the other day I was carrying a game incorrectly, and the next thing I know, I'm on my back. Now, if it wasn't for Bob and Bob Chiropractic, I would not be standing here today. Bob and Bob Chiropractic got a state-of-the-art equipment.
Bob & Bob cares about your safety, and as such we use the latest sanitary procedures. Well, Bob, why don't you tell us where we're located at?
Well, Bob, we're located out there on Weasel Kill Road, right next to the Bob and Bob Taxidermy Shop.
Bob & Bob Chiropractic, where your care ain't no game.
Let's get back to the information, my man. Okay, so now you've got your game all set up properly and installed in your basement. And what, of course, is the first thing you do after it's all set up? You play a game. So you go to turn it on, and you press the start button on the front of the cabinet, and it doesn't do anything. It does nothing. What could possibly be wrong with the game? Well, there could be a couple things, but the main thing to remember is these are coin-operated games. Coin-op equipment. That means they work with coins, or they should work with coins. Now, a lot of hobbyists and homeowners defeat the coin system, and I don't care if it's an electromechanical game or a solid-state game, they will try and defeat the coin system because it's just a pain in the butt to make your game work with coins. A lot of people like it for a nostalgia view. I'm telling you, that's something that will last, I'd say, about a week, putting quarters in your games. You want to have some sort of free play going on your game. Now, on this particular game, somebody added a free play button. That is, when you press this, it does the same thing as putting a quarter through. And on Williams games, usually when you add a credit, you'll hear the knocker go off. For example, you can hear the knocker adding a credit every time I press that button. After I've got credits on the game, then I can press this button and start a game. A lot of solid state games also have options where you can actually set the game to be free play, so you never have to put any money through the coin door. And you would use like the diagnostic switches up here to set that option. Not every game has it, but most Williams solid state games do. Most Bally games before 1985 do not. Most Gottlieb games do not. And anything from the 90s generally will have some sort of free play option. But another thing that you'll see people do is open up the coin door and press the switch that the coin passes as you put a coin through, and you'll hear the knocker again. You could do that too, but I'd rather not have people opening the coin door to add credits to their games. It's just an invitation for trouble. So if possible, talk to a local tech and get the game set into free play mode or have a free play switch added. One of the reasons I don't like people pressing these coin buttons for credits is because if you press them too hard and you get them bent out of whack, bent permanently closed, or one permanently open that's not supposed to be, it can screw up the whole game. So again, I'd rather have a tech or somebody you know that's familiar with pinball set the game up for you for free play if it is not that way already. On a lot of these 90s games, if you can navigate through the diagnostic menus in these newer games, a lot of times you can change the pricing to free play, like right here. So that way you can set the game to free play without doing any modifications to the exterior and without adding any buttons. Electromechanical games are brutally easy to see if they have any credits on them. You can just see right here, right by Anne Margaret's breasts, that the game has 0 credits on it. So if it's not set to free play, that means that this game is not going to start up when the start button is pressed. But if somebody has ingeniously just bent one switch on the back of the game can be started, even though it says 0 credits. Like that. So that game has been put on free play without adding any switches to the coin door. And again, I refer you to any decent tech should be able to do that modification for you. Now I'd like to cover some basic cleaning techniques that you should use on your game to keep the playing surface clean. The cleaner the playing surface, the longer it'll last, the better it'll look, but most importantly, the better the game will play. The less dirt that's on this playing surface means that there's less ball roll resistance, which means you'll have a faster, more rewarding gameplay. I'm using this 1975 Bally Flicker as our cleaning example. This is a game I've basically done nothing to. I got this game, these people were literally throwing it out. It's dirty everywhere. To clean the playfield, I like this product here. It's called Novus 2. I buy this at motorcycle shops, Harley Davidson shops. They make Novus 1, 2, and 3. Forget the 1, forget the 3. You only want the red bottle Novus 2. Now I've done this half of the playfield, and I haven't touched this half. And you can really feel the difference and see the gloss that's over here. And if you listen, when I run my hand over it, it doesn't make any noise. But when I run my hand over the dirty side, hear that? That's just dirt. Using the product's a piece of cake. I just squeeze a little bit out, maybe the size of a dime, onto the playfield. And then I use a nice rag, or maybe not so nice a rag, and I just go in circles, in a circle motion. And I scrub it. Then I use another clean section of the rag and buff it off. And voila! Look at the shine that I get there compared to the dirt that was there just a moment ago. If you're a novice, you don't need to go nuts and do this. Just get the major areas. I mean, when you get more advanced in your pinball work-on skills, you can start taking all the parts off and cleaning underneath everything. But if you're just a novice, I would just get the areas you can reach and where the ball goes. If you can get the majority of the dirt off, you're going to be 100 times better than if you did nothing. So if I don't let my games go too long, this whole process might take me 5 minutes. I should also mention that Novus 2 works great on all eras of playfield. That means from these older lacquer-covered playfields up to the 90s and newer stuff that are automotive urethane covered. I use this on electromechanical games from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and I use it on solid state games from the 1980s and 90s and even present day games. I get asked a lot if Windex or Glass Plus or 409 or any of those cleaners are good for cleaning a playfield, and I would say absolutely not. The biggest problem with these kind of materials is they're very liquidy, and the playfields are porous, and that means that these liquids will get into the pores of the wood, cause the wood to expand, and actually put cracks in the playing surface. So you never want to use anything that's this liquidy to clean a playfield. That's why I like the Novus 2, because it's a thick product and you're not going to have problem with capillary action. The only thing you should be using Windex for is the top glass. After you have your playfield cleaned, it's a pretty good idea to wax it. Any playfield can benefit from a good waxing. Now, there's several different kinds of waxes to get or not to get. The first one I would suggest that you do not get is mill wax. I don't care what anybody tells you about this product, it is not a wax. It is a cleaner, it is much like Novus 2, but it's much smellier, and frankly, I don't think it works as good. This stuff, forget it, don't use it. This is wax. These are real Carnauba waxes. I don't care what brand you use or buy, but when you get a wax, it should be a hard wax, not a liquid. The way that waxes become liquid is that they use a large amount of solvents inside the wax. So the harder the wax, the more wax the wax actually contains. You can't combine cleaning your playfield and waxing it in one step. That is, you clean it with Novus 2, and then you wax it with a good hard Carnauba wax, like this tree wax, which I buy at a hardware store. But any good hard wax, be it Mother's, Meguiar's, Johnson Paste Wax, it doesn't really matter. Just get a good wax. A lot of people ask, what does wax do? Well, if you look at the finish of a playfield, it is actually, on a microscopic level, a bunch of hills and valleys. And the idea behind the wax is to fill the valleys so that it brings them up to the level of the hills. Okay, this way it provides a smoother surface for the ball to roll on with less ball resistance and ultimately less wear on your playfield. Now that you've got a good wax, how do you apply it? Well, first thing you'll need is 2 rags. You'll need an application rag and a buffing rag. And then you just take the rag, roll it around in some wax, And believe me, you don't need a lot. Like, that's plenty, which is not much. And then just apply it. You just rub it in. You let the wax haze. That is, you're basically going to let the solvents in the wax evaporate, and the wax will haze over. Then after the wax is hazed over and dried, which usually takes about 15 minutes, just buff it off. And that's all there is to it. Now don't go nuts. Don't get the wax under all the posts and in these areas in here, because it looks ugly and it's not going to help anything. You only want to get the wax where the ball rolls. It's better to use less than it is to use too much. Now here's a perfect example of what happens to a game when you don't keep it clean. You can see the wear through here where the paint and inks and all the design is basically worn off the playfield right here, and all you have is bare wood. We talked about cleaning the playing surface. How do you clean the rubber? Let me show you how. What I use to clean rubber is just Party Store lighter fluid. I buy this bottle for less than $2 at the Party Store, and I use a paper towel. And you see this rubber where I've got these black marks on it? Well, this means it's time to clean this rubber. If you don't clean the rubber and you let it get dirty, the rubber will start to react with the dirt and you'll get dry rot. And basically you'll lose all the spring and you'll be re-rubbering the game. So all I do is take a regular paper towel and I just squirt a little lighter fluid onto the towel, and then I just wipe off the rubber. The dirt magically comes right off. So I can get most all of this dirt off. Likewise, I like red rubber on the flippers, again because I can see the dirt. So a little more lighter fluid on my paper towel, and this dirt can wipe right off. I like to keep my rubber nice and clean because, again, it makes the game look a lot better and it makes the game play better, and I don't have to spend money or time re-rubbering my game when it gets dirty. I just clean the easy to get to areas. This whole process maybe took 5 minutes. Well, that's it for now, and I hope you come back and join us again for another episode of Topcast Video.